This week we're working on Lab 4, looking at chemical structures. And so we're going to be looking at specific predictable shapes that show up. For example, with the coronavirus, you have the spike proteins on the surface, and all of those shapes that we see in the cool pictures of the virus all come back to these basic shapes that we're going to see in this lab experiment. So you are going to model in some way, shape, or form on this experiment, and exactly what you turn in will be up to your instructor. But some ways that you can model, if you happen to have purchased a small model kit, then you might build models like that. I have larger models that we would be using on campus, but we're not there, but I have those larger models. You can also get creative with some food. I have marshmallows and grapes here, all representing the same molecule. And then I'll also have a separate video that shows you how you can build these models online as well. So you can look at them in a 3D space and do something more technological than a marshmallow if you want to. But if you want something to kind of be able to touch and feel and turn around, that's where even something in your kitchen might be helpful for that. So what are you going to put into each of the columns here? Let's start with carbon dioxide. You may want a separate sheet of paper to do some scratch work before you turn this in, but in the Lewis structure section, you're going to end up with your correct Lewis structure for carbon dioxide. In this column, it asks for the groups around the center atom. So center atom is going to be whatever's in the middle of your molecule. I'm going to count up the atoms and the lone pairs connected just to carbon. So when I look at how many atoms are connected to carbon, I see oxygen and oxygen, so that's 2 atoms. Lone pairs are these kind of electrons here, and I'm focused just on the center atom, and my center carbon has no lone pairs. So I would say it has 2 atoms, no lone pairs, so my answer here is that there's 2 groups, and that is 2 groups of negative electron regions that want to get as far from each other as possible. Second column kind of builds off of this, so the number of lone pairs on that center atom, so not in the whole molecule, but what's on the center, and if we look back to the center, there were no lone pairs there. In the next column, we're going to redraw the Lewis structure, but in the correct shape. So here, when I build this, whether I build it with what we call ball and stick molecules or just online, you're going to redraw it. Here we can see this is what we call a linear shape. So like so, still going to put those electrons on so we can see them. We want to be able to name this shape, and you've been learning this in lecture, hopefully, but the name of this shape is linear. And you'll see that whether I build it with this large model or a smaller model or the online models, you're always going to get that same linear kind of shape. You'll also notice here that my big model and my small one, we always use black for carbon and red for oxygen. So no matter what the scale of it is, the colors actually mean something to us. So this is a linear shape, and the bond angle would be this angle here, and that's 180 degrees, which the online modeling software can help you with also. Then we're going to draw bond dipoles, if applicable. So that would be where one atom is pulling electrons more than the other. Looking at carbon and oxygen here, oxygen is more electronegative, so it's going to pull electrons. And the way I show that here would be that oxygen is pulling electrons, and on this bond, the oxygen is pulling electrons. So those are my bond dipoles. And then if applicable, you would also draw a molecular dipole. Those are going to be larger, usually. And those are going to be whatever these little blue bond dipoles add up to. Here, these are going in exactly opposite directions, so there's no molecular dipole. If there's no molecular dipole, that is the same as saying that this is a nonpolar molecule. So carbon dioxide is what we call a nonpolar molecule, and that also means it doesn't have one of these big pink arrows on it. All right, so you are going to do those same Lewis structures, look at the centers for everything on this page, including those bond dipoles and molecular dipoles where applicable. And then on the next page, we're going to go ahead, just since we're off campus, and skip this one. You'll build this, you'll build this, and then these I will have a picture to send to you somewhere of these actually being built. This is aspirin and this is caffeine, and you can start to see some of the shapes that we developed on this page show up in these larger molecules. In terms of appraise, let's go ahead and skip those for this semester. So this is really just showing that you can do all of the drawing work, and then again, your instructor will have you submit some kind of proof of your modeling, probably some kind of pictures, either from using online models, your own models if you bought some, or food if you want to have a little bit of fun with that. All right, so that is chemical structures.